Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of this F1 25 Joshua Pearce career mode. This is part 13 of the series. If you did miss the last episode, Lando Norris claimed a crucial home Grand Prix victory for the very first time against Max Verstappen, who finished in second position to keep his championship fight alive. Lewis Hamilton, he also kept his home podium streak alive by finishing in third, and for us in the end, Leclerc was just too strong and we couldn't get away through around the Monegasque, and it was very annoying because he was so good at the corner exits, which just meant that on any exit we did not get the run on him, and we ended up spending essentially the entire second stint of the Grand Prix stuck behind him. And I tried everything possible to make sure I could try and get by him, and it just wasn't to be, and in the end it was a 5th position for ourselves. Max Verstappen will head into this race weekend with a shrunken lead. It's now down to 77 points over Lando Norris. Lewis Hamilton's in third, 128 points behind. Myself in P6, 7 points behind Oscar Piastri. Our teammate Sonny Hayes is in ninth, 55 points behind Charles Leclerc, and Red Bull, they're leading the Constructors' Championship by 78 points to McLaren. Ferrari are in third, 144 points behind, and Apex GP, we find ourselves in fourth, 81 points behind Ferrari. And we now find ourselves immediately to some R&D. We're going to take a look at the durability for a major electrical systems upgrade with some reliability testing. This will put our durability back on par with Williams at the top of the charts. This will come in at a standard development rate just before the Dutch Grand Prix, and this weekend there will be 3 upgrades on the car: drag reduction, weight reduction, and an engine power upgrade, which are all very key elements to being fast here in Belgium. So hopefully this will assist us into a good result for the weekend. And for the Grand Prix, the main qualifying is looking nice and dry, but it seems as if it could be a wet session at the start of the sprint race before drying out in the last few laps. We thought we made some big performance gains, but McLaren has outdone us. Mercedes also big movers, jumping both Red Bull and Ferrari, and the top 5 were pretty much now very similar on performances, so it's going to be a very interesting battle for the top 10 positions hopefully. Aston Martin and Williams very close, and so too Haas and Racing Bulls, with Sauber and Alpine bringing out the rear of the field as we now get ourselves prepared for sprint qualifying.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us, and the track action will be getting underway very shortly. I've got Anthony Davidson, Naomi Schiff alongside me. Before we focus on that, Naomi, I'd just like us to consider some of these big rumours that are circulating at the moment about driver moves up and down the paddock. Just how distracting is it to focus on putting in strong performances at the same time as negotiating your future?
Well, it can be a really big distraction, particularly for the drivers who are out of contract at the moment. And for them, it's going to be the challenge of managing what they're doing off track and compartmentalizing that from what happens on track, because we know that this next decision in their career is going to be a big one. So that can put a lot of pressure on your shoulders, but you don't want that to put so much pressure on your shoulders that you start over driving, making mistakes, because in this sport, you can go from hero to zero in an instant.
Easier said than done, Anton. As we pass by a driver now who's considering their future, even if you've got a contract, they're not necessarily even worth the paper they're written on. You've got to keep putting in really big, impressive performances.
It's an industry that demands perfection from not just the team, but the drivers as well, first and foremost. So if you start to relax in any way, even if you have a multi-year deal in place, like you say, not worth the paper it's written on, because you can be kicked out before you know it. If the performances start to slip, the team will have their eye on you straight away and you'll be out the door.
So no room for complacency. Let's see who can put in some big performances on track today. All the action up next. Don't go anywhere.
Whoa, that pretty much now is the start of the silly season. So we've already had 2 driver approaches. If you do remember, we've had teams from both Sauber and Haas approach us, but it is not something that we're too interested in at the moment, moving away from Apex GP. And we start at coming to the end of our first flying lap here in sprint qualifying on the medium tyres, as that's all we've got since it is sprint qualifying, and we go fastest initially, but we do get dropped down to P2 in the end, just behind Oscar Piastri by only 0.02 of a second. George Russell's in third, 0.2 behind. Our teammate Sonny Hayes is in ninth, 1.2 seconds behind, and knocked out in sprint qualifying the first part. It's Charles Leclerc by 0.02 of a second, who claimed his first win at this circuit all those years ago. Esteban Ocon, Jack Doohan, Liam Lawson, Pierre Gasly, and Fernando Alonso also not making it through. And we'll go straight to the end of our first flying lap here in the second part of qualifying, once again on the medium compound tyres, and you can see they're struggling a little bit through the bus stop chicane. It's still going to be a purple lap, and in the end, that is going to be good enough for us to be fastest by an absolute whopping, nearly 7/10 of a second to Yuki Tsunoda. Then it's going to be Piastri in third, 9/10 behind, and knocked out in sprint qualifying part 2. It's going to be Lewis Hamilton by only 9 thousandths, making it both Ferraris out. Our teammate in 12th, Bortoletto, Hadjar, Stroll, and Nico Hulkenberg not making it to this next part of qualifying. As we come to the end of our flying lap here, we're now onto the soft compound tyres. You can see that we waited right until the end of this session to get this a lap in, and where is it going to put us? And the steering wheel is going to say P2, which is a little bit disappointing because that felt like a really good lap, and oh my god, we set an identical lap time to Lando. An identical lap time. I have never seen this, well, I've seen it before in the game, but I've never actually had it happen to myself. So the front row of the grid for the sprint race set identical lap times in qualifying, which is absolutely insane. But since he set the lap first, he gets the pole position.
So it's all about speed in today's sprint. Not very many laps and no chance to get ahead on strategy. Who here today has the raw skill to take them to the top? Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he'll start from pole position. And Joshua Pearce completes the front row. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Russell, Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, and Albon, Verstappen, Antonelli, Sainz, and Ollie Behrman, Hamilton, Hayes, Gabriel Bortoletto, and Hadjar, Stroll, Hulkenberg, Charles Leclerc, and Esteban Ocon, Doohan, Lawson, Gasly, and Fernando Alonso rounds off the grid. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out.
Okay, let's have a comms check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Alrighty, we line up on the grid in P2. Still a front row start despite setting that, I still can't believe it, exact same lap time as Lando Norris. So we line up, we're ready for the start of the sprint race here in Belgium, and it's lights out and we're off, and it's a pretty good start against Lando Norris. He has to cover us and he goes to the racing line, but we send it down the inside. We've locked the rears and we have to take avoiding action to try and make sure that we don't spear into the side of Lando Norris, because that would have been an absolute race ender for both of us if we did end up making the contact. We'll go side by side through Eau Rouge and now to the top of Radion, and that is us now through into the lead of the Grand Prix. But it's not over yet, because Lando Norris is right behind us. He's tucked into our slipstream. He pulls to the left-hand side of our car, and we now have to try and make sure that we don't get done by George Russell as well. But we go deeper on the brakes. We just keep it within the track limits, and we defend from Lando Norris, and that is us maintaining the lead here in the sprint race as he tucks in behind us. George Russell's going side by side with the other McLaren of Oscar Piastri, and that sees him now into third position. Piastri behind Verstappen, Tsunoda, the two Red Bulls in 5th and 6th, and then it's Albon, Antonelli, Sainz, and Lewis Hamilton rounding out the top 10 as we head to the end of the opening lap here in the sprint race. Alex Albon, though, he's got quite a bit of damage there on his front wing, so he is going to peel into the pit lane, and that is going to release this big pack of cars here. They're going 2 by 2 by 2 through the bus stop chicane, and you can see this also opened up quite the gap to Yuki Tsunoda there. So from Antonelli to Tsunoda, P6, P7, it's nearly 2 seconds of a gap. So that damage in the back half of the track there has definitely hindered the rest of the grid. They're being stuck behind the wounded Alex Albon as the battling continues through the hill, and it is going to be our teammates up against Behrman as they head down the straight. Side by side they'll continue. The Sauber's tucked right up behind our teammate now. They're almost bump drafting him down the straight. Is he going to be able to swing it around the outside? He'll give him the inside for the next part of the chicane. No, he can't do it. Behrman, he'll sweep around and he'll maintain the P10. It's excellent battling here, but unfortunately that's not for points paying positions. as of yet. Max Verstappen, though, who is in the points, he is looking to get himself now up into 4th position ahead of Oscar Piastri, and that is exactly what is going to get done. Behind, though, Kimi Antonelli, he's now ahead of the driver who he's replaced at Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, now in the Scarlet Red Ferrari, as the battle between Behrman and our teammate continues, and it is fierce battling all throughout the pack. And as we now head to lap 4, Lewis Hamilton gets himself back ahead of Kimi Antonelli. And you'll take note, though, we have absolutely blitzed the field. We're currently now 2 seconds ahead of Lando Norris, well and truly outside of DRS range, but I'm not going to say that we are too far in the clear just yet. But you'll take note that the gap now 2.2. We are extending our lead out the front in the clean air. Lando Norris starting to struggle a little bit. He's also coming under pressure from George Russell, who's only now half a second behind. So from P2 down to P4, they're all in a DRS train now. And you can see our teammate Sonny Hayes, he's now looking to try and get past Behrman in a place he hasn't tried just yet in this Grand Prix. He's only been trying down the back straight, and now going into the bus stop chicane, he looks to the outside. It will give him the inside for this next part of the chicane. Is he going to be able to get the move done? Behrman, though, he's going to get the better traction going down the straight. He's going to maintain this P10 just for now. But now heading down the straight, Antonelli and Hamilton and Tsunoda now in this battle. Tsunoda, though, looking quite slow. He's lost touch to his teammate who remember, a few laps ago, got himself ahead of Oscar Piastri. Behind, though, our teammate, he has finally got himself ahead of Oliver Behrman, and hopefully can try and now drive away from the Haas driver. Max Verstappen, though, he's continuing to try and get himself further up the road here, and this will put him onto the sprint podium. If he can make this move stick on George Russell, he'll go to the inside at the second part of the bus stop chicane, but it looks like Russell might just have the traction down, just like we saw just not long ago with Oliver Behrman and our teammate. But it looks like that is not going to be the case this time around. Verstappen around the outside at the first corner. They'll continue going side by side. Verstappen, though, gets the better traction, and he'll take the position away from George Russell here in the sprint race. But it's not over yet, because they've now gone through that DRS detection point as they go through Eau Rouge, which now means that George Russell, he's got a shot here to try and take that position away. The DRS is now wide open, and that is exactly what it's going to do. He's going to get that move done well and truly before the braking zone, and that's him back up into the podium positions as we now take a look on board with ourselves. And, you know, it's been a pretty good sprint race, I must say. We round the final couple of corners. It's a 3.5 second lead to Lando Norris, and that is going to be us claiming victory, a very convincing victory here in the sprint race. From P2 to the win, we were on identical qualifying times, but we overcame that, I guess, mental thought that we couldn't just break by a tiny little millisecond to be faster than Lando Norris. But in the end, it will be Norris and George Russell that join us on the podium. The rest of the top pay is Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda, Kimi Antonelli, and Lewis Hamilton. Our teammate, unfortunately, though, finishes P10, which is not a points-paying position here in the sprint.
High-speed straights, heady elevation changes and dramatic corners. What is there not to love about today? It's qualifying day here at Spa-Francorchamps.
All right, we have proved that we have definitely got plenty of pace around Spa here today, and let's try and see if we can't overcome the disappointment of sprint qualifying and actually get the pole position. We'll jump to the end of our first flying lap here in the first part of qualifying. It's 2 purple sectors. We'll cross the line, and it is a fastest lap of 42.7, and that is going to be good enough to be fastest in this opening session by 0.6 of a second. So definitely proving ourselves at the moment ahead of Max Verstappen. Alex Albon, though, in the Williams, he's 0.9 behind, up in third, and our teammate Sonny Hayes is in fifth, 1.6 seconds behind. Knocked out, though, in qualifying 1, Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes, Gabriel Bortoleto, Oliver Behrman, Liam Lawson, Jack Doohan, and Isaac Hadjar makes it both Racing Bulls out in the first part of qualifying. And we're going to continue where we were in qualifying 1, 2 purple sectors as we come to the end of the first flying lap here in the second part of qualifying, and we go fastest once again with a 42.5, and this time around is fastest by half a second to Max Verstappen. Our teammate, though, he jumps himself up to third, though, 0.7 behind. A special mention to Pierre Gasly, though, he put it in to Q3 in the slowest car on the grid, knocked out in qualifying 2. We will find Lewis Hamilton once again knocked out in P11. This time it's only 0.03 of a second. Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda, both Williams, Albon ahead of Carlos Sainz, and Nico Hulkenberg failing to make it to this final part of qualifying. As we now jump to the end of our first flying lap here, we're on a used set of tyres. This is the tyres we used in qualifying 2, and we do go fastest But now it is time to start our final flying lap. Brand new set of tyres. The track is cooling down with the shade heading over the circuit. Turn 1 is looking very nice, and immediately we found 0.2 of a second essentially going just through the first corner. So this is definitely a big advantage of going onto a fresh set of tyres. Piastri though, he's going to take that P1 away from us just for the moment, and he will look like he's pretty good on provisional pole, but we're going to have to see how well this lap goes. Remember, he's only just beaten us on a set of used tyres. We set a purple first sector, so we're looking very, very solid. We now head through this fast S section and we keep it planted. The car feels like it's on absolute rails. We go to an early apex, let it run out wide just a little bit, cut it back to a second apex to try and open it up, and so then we can send it through here. We're on the rev limiter going through there to just try and make sure that we're not going to break into too much wheel spin. Drop it down a gear, keep it flat, going through Spoon, and now we're over 0.6 of a second in the clear. We are absolutely flying around here. We're going to flick it right, flick it left, and it is still super planted. We're not feeling any sort of tyre wear or overheating from these soft compound tyres, considering how much we're pushing those. We touch the gravel though on the exit there, and that is going to slow us down just a little bit now heading down this back straight. But look at the delta, it's nearly a full second. It's 9.6. That is going to be an absolute massive lap if we can keep this going. All we got to do now is navigate the bus stop chicane. We go very deep under the brakes, but it's a little bit too deep. We run it a little bit wide. We have to gather it back up, and we've lost a couple of tenths there going through the bus stop chicane. And is that going to be for pole? It is still going to be a pole position, but that is a tad disappointing that I didn't break that 1 second mark. I got a bit greedy going into the bus stop chicane, and it cost me a little bit, but we still managed to get pole position by over 0.2 of a second to Oscar Piastri. Verstappen finds himself in third. Our teammate Sonny Hayes will line up on the second row of the grid, so a very good qualifying for the team overall, and Pierre Gasly in that Alpine manages a P10.
Welcome then, as we take a step back into the nostalgic golden days of motorsport. Spa is unashamedly a throwback, and all the better for it. Climbs, drops, sharp turns, chicanes, sweeping high-speed corners, all while taking in some of the most beautiful scenery that Europe has to offer. This might sound like a travel brochure, but it's not. It's a race day. Welcome along to Spa-Francorchamps for the Belgian Grand Prix. Spa-Francorchamps then, a historic 19-corner circuit with a lap distance of 4.35 miles. There's over 100 metres of elevation change here, and with long stretches of the lap spent flat out, a good top speed will be vital for success. It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Joshua Pearce lines up on pole position, and Oscar Piastri completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Hayes, Lando Norris and Russell, Leclerc, Ocon, Stroll and Pierre Gasly, Hamilton, Tsunoda, Alex Albon and Sainz, Hülkenberg, Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto and Ollie Behrman, Lawson, Doohan, Hadjar and Fernando Alonso rounds off the grid. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today? And alongside me today, a man small in stature but big on comment, Anthony Davidson. Hello. Now, you're the racing driver in this partnership, so tell us about this racing driver. Put us in their shoes. How are they going to be feeling?
Well, you've got to be prepared, Crofty. Before you even step foot inside the car, you've got to know, you've got to have a pre-race game plan. You've watched videos before you get into the car of previous races gone by. You know where you have to place your car if X, Y or Z happens in front of you or behind you. So having this clear game plan is absolutely essential before you get in the car.
All right, let's have a quick radio check, please. Radio check. Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
So the two stoppers, the way to go here for the Grand Prix. We're going to be starting on the medium compound tyre and going to lap 8, which is essentially the distance of the sprint race. Then we'll go to the hards and then finishing the Grand Prix on the soft compound tyres. We line up from pole position for the Belgian Grand Prix. It is 5 lights and it is a very, very long hole, but we eventually go for the start of the Grand Prix. You can see that up in the top right, it is a very mixed bag of tyre compounds, and we get a really, really good start, and we really don't need to cover going into turn 1, but that is because Piastri is on the hard compound tyre, and so he is not going to be able to get that jump off the grid that he probably would have expected against us. Our teammate, though, Sonny Hayes, he started on the soft compound tyres, and he's managed to get himself ahead of Max Verstappen, so that's a net position gain for our teammate Verstappen. He's all the way down into P4. Oscar Piastri, though, with the slipstream, he looks to our inside, but we're wise to it, and we managed to discourage him from a move going into the chicane here. George Russell, Leclerc, Lando Norris will line up in at P7 just behind. Esteban Ocon, Stroll, and Alex Albon will take the final points paying position at the moment as we go through the first couple of corners of the opening lap here. Charles Leclerc, though, all over the grass, and that's going to open up the door for Lando Norris to try and make a move into the bus stop chicane. Momentum had been ruined going into the braking zone there, and that is going to allow Norris to try and get now the inside for turn 1. And is he going to be able to make this move stick? Usually, though, we see the AI be able to get the better traction on the outside, and at the moment it does look like Leclerc's got that little bit of an edge over Norris, and now go through Eau Rouge to the top of Raidillon, and it is Leclerc still ahead of Lando Norris, but now there is an extra part to this race that's just become activated. DRS, it's lap 2. DRS is now activated, and you can see that Max Verstappen immediately trying to get himself past our teammate Sonny Hayes. He does not want to get stuck behind him when those tyres start to go off with the soft compound tyres. Lance Stroll, though, and he's further down the field. He's done well to get himself into 9th, but unfortunately, the day is going to come to an end very, very early. It's only lap 2, and his engine has already expired. He'll pull off to driver's right in the final sector, and that is his day done here in Belgium. That promotes Isaac Hadjar from last to 21st. So what big gains that is for the Racing Bull. But we focus back to the front here. It's a very big, angry pack. It's George Russell versus Lando Norris going through the bus stop chicane. They'll continue to go side by side, but as they head down the straight, they'll go back to single file with the DRS, just kind of equalizing the pace a little bit down that small front straight. But the battle will continue as they go down the back straight here, and it is going to be Norris now ahead of our teammate Sonny Hayes. Leclerc, though, he is trying to get himself through as well, but in the end he'll have to stay just in front of George Russell. We get our first objective here of the Grand Prix, and with the rest of the field now starting to battle with the DRS being activated, our engineer Mark reckons this is a good time for us to try and set some blistering lap times to really stretch out this lead that we've got. It's already over 4 seconds, and we've only just started lap 4. We come to the end of lap 4 to start lap 5, and we well and truly beat it. Our lap time was a 46.7, and we needed to do a 51, so nearly 5 seconds that we ended up beating the target by, and so we're well and truly looking like we've got absolutely rapid pace around here in Spa. But we do have to be careful that we don't overcook the tyres a little bit too much. So it's all very well pushing really, really hard to try and stretch out this gap, which is now sitting at 5.3 seconds as we go onto the 7th lap. But we cannot let these tyres overheat. Luckily for us, though, it is lap 7, so we've only got a lap or so to go until we're in for our first of 2 pit stops. The 2 RBs, they're fighting ahead. It is now Isaac Hadjar ahead of Liam Lawson. You'll notice they've actually worked their way up through the field. That is because a lot of the other teams are now starting to do their first pit stops, so that would be the soft compound tyre runners now going in for their first of, I would also imagine, 2 pit stops. The 2 McLarens battling it out. They're both on hard compound tyres, so McLaren might have a little bit of an issue on their hands trying to split their strategy. So that could leave one or even both of them are vulnerable to any sort of undercuts. We now peel into the pits for our first stop. We get it all slowed down to the pit lane speed limit, and you can see there Max Verstappen behind us. He's going to follow us in. The 2 McLarens, they're going to continue on, and the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, he'll also peel into the pit lane. So it's going to be Norris now who takes over the lead of the Grand Prix, with Piastri right behind him. For us now, we're onto the hard compound tyres. It's a good stop, 2.4 seconds, and we'll leave the box in a P3, and we're only 7 or 8 seconds behind. What's it actually going to equal out to be? It's about 6 seconds. 6 seconds we're behind the 2 McLarens by, and you can see now we have very quickly caught up to the back of Lando Norris. He's 3 seconds up the road, but I mean, that's only a couple of laps, and we've gained that much time. We get our next objective, and we have to try and burn off our fuel, so that gives me even more incentive to try and push really hard to see how much of this deficit that we can try and catch up to the McLarens and pretty much get ourselves a full pit stop ahead of them, and that's exactly what we've done. Look at that. He's not even into the pit lane yet. Now he's in the lane, but we're already well and truly past him. So as he was coming into the lane, we were going by. So I'm going to call that a win and say that we pretty much got by him, which is really good. But it's a very, very slow stop on the rear left. The issues there for the McLaren pit crew, and that is going to hurt Lando quite a bit, I'd imagine. His teammate has already gone through, and he is not even finished traversing yet this very slow pit lane, and he'll exit, and he's going to be absolutely miles off the back of his teammate. His teammate boxed from being pretty much right up his gearbox, and that is him now 4 seconds behind his teammate. We'll do an order check here now that most of the field has done their first pit stop. So we lead the way by 9 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, and Charles Leclerc rounds out the podium. Oscar Piastri is now ahead of Lando Norris after that pit stop blunder. George Russell, our teammate Sonny Hayes, has now fallen down to P7, so I'm wondering maybe the soft tyre wasn't the way to start this Grand Prix on. Yuki Tsunoda, then Esteban Ocon rounds out the points. Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso, Nico Hulkenberg, Oliver Behrman, Kimi Antonelli, Gabriel Bortoleto. Jack Doohan has just made himself past the Williams of Carlos Sainz, and there's Pierre Gasly. He had such a good qualifying, and he now finds himself all the way down in the P19. Then it's the 2 Racing Bulls of Hadjar ahead of Liam Lawson on board now with Yuki Tsunoda in this really good camera angle, and he'll go down the inside at the bus stop chicane. A very late overtaking opportunity there for Yuki Tsunoda, but is he going to be able to make it work? He's, according to the timing, he's now got himself ahead of our teammate Sonny Hayes, and he's actually side by side, but he now pulls ahead of our teammate going into turn 1, and that is him now up into P8. But as we've mentioned previously, that will now leave him vulnerable to any possible DRS down this straight, and that's exactly what's going to happen. But it's going to make it even worse when he sees the Haas of Esteban Ocon go through. Now Ocon trying to get through on our teammate, and he's going to take it 2 for 1. An absolute brilliant opportunistic move there from Esteban Ocon that will get him now up well and truly inside the points. For ourselves, we, by the narrowest of margins, miss out on completing that objective. So, once again, I'm going to call that a slight win, because I reckon we're only about 0.2 of a kilo away from actually getting that, which is a pretty good. Yuki Tsunoda, though, after that disappointment of having not really playing the DRS games too well, he now finds himself getting himself back ahead of our teammate. So our teammate is at risk now of falling out of the points. Sonny Hayes is struggling out there. He's got Alex Albon right up the back of him now. Max Verstappen, though, is now coming in for his second pit stop. He went onto the soft compound tyres, and he didn't really make a headway that I really thought he was going to be. I thought in the soft tyre versus the hard tyre, he would have been able to close the gap down a little bit, but in the end, we actually were able to extend it by 4 seconds. So we're absolutely flying on these hard compound tyres. You can see the Ferrari of Leclerc is also in the lane, so they're on identical strategies. I would imagine Ocon is making his way even further up the field, and that puts him now up into P4. Charles Leclerc, though, behind, he now finds himself all the way into P8 and fighting the Williams, who has not come in for a pit stop yet, but him having to fight is only going to cost him more time to Max Verstappen. But back on board with ourselves, we're going to be receiving another objective here, and we now need to drain the ERS. So because our pace has been actually really good, I haven't really been using it too much, so the pace can definitely get upped a bit more if I really want to, but I've also been saving it just in case, for whatever reason, I need to use it. I don't like whether if somehow we manage to lose this 30 seconds, if we have a really bad pit stop and we end up becoming quite vulnerable to some sort of undercut, I want to keep that battery there just in case it's required. At the moment, our pace is well and truly good enough that I can use a little bit of battery just to get me going down the straights a little bit better, and that is about it. As we now look at George Russell, he is trying to get himself ahead of the Racing Bull here of Liam Lawson. Lawson has not come in for his second pit stop yet, so he'll use the DRS to get himself well and truly ahead before they even make the braking zone once again, and that puts him now up into P7, and he's being chased, he's being hunted down by Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari versus Mercedes once again, and we now are looking at the tyre wear. Tyre wear is actually doing pretty good. I probably could very easily go to the end, but I'm just gonna do what the team says. Team knows better, and they are wanting me to come in for the softs, and I reckon a 3-lap dash on the softs at the end would actually be pretty fun. So we've got the time to do it, we've got the delta, we've got 30 seconds, so even if we do have a slow pit stop, it should be well and truly covered in the end. So onto the softs, it's a 2.3, so even faster pit stop than before. So the boys and girls in the Apex GP garage doing really well with our pit stop so far. I reckon this season we've only maybe had 1 or 2 blunders, which has been pretty damn good, as now the two McLarens, they're battling it out. This could be for a final spot on the podium, but they need to stop battling each other and try and focus on getting to Charles Leclerc. They could use the strategy of DRS swapping down the 2 DRS straights, but in the end, they find themselves going side by side and losing time to the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, and this is not over yet. The DRS detection point just before Eau Rouge, which now means Oscar Piastri is going to get the DRS going down this straight, and he'll immediately pull to the left of Lando Norris, and he's going to get this move well and truly completed, hits the brake going into the chicane, and that's him now up into P4, and will these two McLarens be able to work together to try and catch Charles Leclerc? Behind him, though, it is Esteban Ocon getting himself ahead of the Aston Martin. That's Fernando Alonso now down into P9. Ocon having an absolute drive of his lifetime. He was up into P2 at one point through the pit stop windows, and he now finds himself genuinely battling for an 8th position here, and so that is going to be really good for Haas and their Constructors' Championship. As now going on to lap 20, it is now Norris's turn to use the DRS to get himself ahead of Oscar Piastri, and that gap now less than 2 seconds to Charles Leclerc. So the DRS swapping is kind of working for the McLarens, but they need to find a little bit more if they actually want to try and claim this podium away from Leclerc. Hamilton in the other Ferrari, he gets himself now ahead of George Russell, ahead of his old team and his old teammate, and that's him now up into 6th position as Tsunoda. He's also looking to get himself by Fernando Alonso. So Alonso is really struggling towards the end of the Grand Prix here in his Aston. So I wonder, struggling maybe a little bit from the tyre where he is on the hard compound tyres, it looks like, as to Yuki Tsunoda, who finds himself now up into P9 and trying to get himself to the back of Esteban Ocon in the Haas. Going on to the final lap, though, Lando Norris has been able to catch Charles Leclerc, and he goes around the outside for the final spot on the podium. Leclerc, though, he is wise to it. He stays, and he gets to the inside now. They continue to go side by side down the hill into a very tricky braking zone. And if Lando wants this podium, he's going to go the long way around, and he does get it done. Is Piastri now going to be able to get himself ahead of Charles Leclerc? We'll have to wait and find out. But back on board with ourselves, we have driven I'm going to say a pretty perfect race. You couldn't have asked for much more, and we are going to win our 2nd Grand Prix in Formula 1, and that is us winning the Belgian Grand Prix. An absolute dominant performance from ourselves.
Well, it's victory, and what a victory for Joshua Pearce.
I mean, it looked like they were in a different category at points during the race, led every lap. I mean, what more can we say?
And once all the hard work is over, and after lap of brilliant racing, it's time now to celebrate with our podium trio.
I was not expecting to be able to say that in the second half of this season that we'll be able to win races by set margins. We won Canada with a little bit of luck, and now this one was just from pure, genuine pace, and it feels absolutely perfect. It was a great strategy from the team to stay on top of any possible undercuts from behind. Verstappen and Norris are also on the podium with us in the end. Leclerc will hold on to that 4th position from Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Esteban Ocon holds on from Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso, and that rounds out the top 10. Disappointing race for our teammate Hayes in P12 after starting on the 2nd row. Stroll, the only non-finisher after that very early engine failure. Max Verstappen extends his lead once again to 78 points to Lando Norris. Hamilton's in 3rd, 142 points behind. Myself in 4th, only 2 points behind Hamilton, and Hayes is in 9th, 67 points behind Charles Leclerc. Red Bull leads the Constructors' Championship by 70 points to McLaren. Ferrari 3rd, 151 points behind. Apex GP were 4th, 69 points behind Ferrari, and our driver ratings has gained in absolutely everything with an overall rating of now 85, and our driver recognition has also gained. We've been bumped up to 56% against our teammate, and as we now head back to the HQ to end off this episode, we're going to be greeted with another secret meeting, our 3rd secret meeting. So absolutely is correct what Natalie Pinkham was saying at the start of the episode. Silly season is well and truly underway, so please stay tuned for that. If you did enjoy this, please make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one for the Hungarian Grand Prix.